Every great spy game promises the same thing, that for a few hours you can be somebody exceptional. If you had an Xbox 360 or PS3, 3 legendary spy fantasies were yours for the taking: the Bourne Conspiracy, 007 Bloodstone, and Splinter Cell Conviction. They all chased the same feeling, but which one actually delivered it? To find out, I played all 3. Conviction was already an old favorite of mine, but I wanted to know if Bourne or Bond could stand alongside Sam Fisher's divisive revenge story. And what surprised me most wasn't which one won, it was how close they all came, and why. Why these games? In some ways they're eerily similar. Even the backs of their boxes boast the same features: brutal melee combat, high-octane chases, and fully becoming the deadly secret agent you know and love. All are third-person action games released within 2 years of each other. They blend guns, gadgets, and hand-to-hand combat, each with its own take on melee and shooting takedowns. But once you play them, you realize they're all chasing that fantasy in pretty different ways. And the place where that difference surprised me the most was Bourne. As it turns out, I knew even less about this game than I thought I did. I thought the story was going to be a retelling of the original trilogy of Bourne films, hence the all-encompassing Conspiracy title instead of sharing a title with any one film. Come to find out, this game is an adaptation of the first film, and it takes a great deal of liberties with adding and modifying events to make them more compelling as video game levels. The setup will be familiar to anyone who's seen the first Bourne movie, and the cutscenes decently recreate the look and feel of Doug Liman's excellent film. It is a little jarring seeing someone who looks and sounds nothing like Matt Damon in the role, where they have otherwise faithfully recreated the settings and even the costumes from the movie, as well as cast a decent Chris Cooper sound-alike.
Do what you have to.
And wait, what?
You don't remember any of this?
Franca Potent actually reprises her role as Marie? So, the box says become Bourne. We have our favorite amnesiac assassin at our disposal. What do we do with him? Like all 3 games in our comparo, the Bourne Conspiracy is first and foremost a third-person shooter, and while all 3 of these games feature some amount of hand-to-hand combat, I was surprised at the care and attention the developers at High Moon Studios put into the melee mechanics here. I would go as far as to say the Bourne Conspiracy is 50% third-person shooter and 50% brawler, which is completely bonkers and a ratio I was not ready for. Let's discuss the brawling for a minute, because this was a genuine surprise to me, and there's a lot to cover. You'll find light attack, heavy attack, and block as the 3 main inputs for the fistfights. The game constantly reminds you to chain light and heavy attacks together to form combos, but there's something missing here that I can't totally put my finger on. Perhaps because of the way the Batman Arkham games rewired my brain, I was trying not to button mash in the Bourne Conspiracy. I wanted to time my inputs to 1 button press per hit, but the rhythm of the animations and control timing isn't meant for that. If you want to chain together combos, you have to press light and heavy in quick succession and let Jason put the hurt on the bad guys with the orders you gave him. If you wait for your hit to land before hitting the next button in the sequence, Jason will stop and start the combo over again. There are some cool moves on display, but you'll only see the same handful over and over again, and I couldn't discern any kind of strategy for why you might try one over the other. There's also very little difference between the light and heavy attacks based on their animations or timing. I think it should be more obvious to an observer which attacks are light versus heavy, and I think the player should feel the difference with a trade-off of knockback power versus wind-up time. As it stands, the line between the 2 is fuzzy. You can block attacks and also scoot backwards, which usually causes Jason to deflect blows without taking damage. The block button is A, which is a little counterintuitive as many fighting games and action games put block or counter on one of the shoulder buttons nowadays. I like how much abuse Jason can take and his different reactions to attacks while blocking, including ducking, dodging, and being knocked back without taking damage. Bourne has an adrenaline meter that fills up as you land hits on enemies, and when you fill it enough, you can use it to trigger scripted takedowns in fistfights or slow-motion gun kills, which I'll get to later. The melee finishers especially are brutal in the absolute best way, and there's a little foreshadowing of Splinter Cell Conviction, which used environmental takedowns during interrogation sequences as a selling point. But the environmental takedowns in Bourne are more plentiful and more exciting. The choreography of the fighting is genuinely great, and the accompanying sound effects are killer. Doing the multi-enemy takedowns is especially gratifying. They totally nailed what the Bourne movie fight choreography is like. The developers employed Jeff Imada, who did the martial arts for the Bourne movies as well, so when it comes to capturing the look and feel of the films, it doesn't get better. They also do this thing where fights will start where Bourne will engage new foes with a quick scripted series of attacks. While it's outside of player control, it is a cool way of teeing up a fight. And the choreography is always cool to watch, especially because it's got that same energy you see in the films that the player actions don't quite capture. Speaking of not quite capturing the energy of the films, I do think the game comes closest when the scripted fight animations play out, whether they're in the takedowns, cutscenes, or those quick tee-ups. The fights are broken up by a lot of these pattern interruptions, in a good way, and there's some value in watching these awesome scripted attacks and feeling like you're kind of involved in the action. But I was thinking about how I would change the combat in this game to make it both more engaging and also capture the essence of fighting in the films. I didn't foresee connecting the Bourne Conspiracy to Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, but here we are. One of my all-time favorite video games. Metal Gear Rising boasts a cool counter system that I don't think I've seen in another game before. Whereas all of us are accustomed to the modern convention of L1 to guard and L1 right before an attack hits to parry, Metal Gear Rising asks you to parry incoming attacks by attacking at the moment the opponent is about to land their attack. This is a neat setup for a number of reasons, but I was thinking about it as I was playing Bourne, because I think such a system would be a natural fit for a game that otherwise features no parry system at all. The Bourne style of fighting always has this awesome rhythm and intensity to it, and some of that stems from the way the characters are hitting each other's limbs to disrupt their strikes. Rather than just dodging or blocking an attack as it connects, the Bourne style involves lots of batting or knocking people's fists, legs, knives, newspapers, or pens out of the way to create an opening to strike. Gosh, what does that almost sound like? We could recreate that feeling in a video game, allowing players to attack at the moment an opponent strikes to block and eventually counter their blows. It would turn defense into an extension of offense, which is always what the Bourne style feels like to me. The more I think about this idea, the more I like it. I think it could pose some animation challenges, but if done right, I think this concept would add a lot more engagement to the combat and massively enhance the look and style of it. As it stands, the fistfights are okay, but a lot of them also drag on too long and are pretty unfair. There are a handful of bosses who deal out way more damage than they take, and you need to land takedowns during boss fights to recover health, but they don't always result in healing, which is annoying. The boss fights are designed around takedowns, so the goal is to wail on dudes until you have enough adrenaline saved up to really hammer them, and the takedowns are worth the price of admission. This fight in Jason's apartment has so much promise because they absolutely nailed recreating the scene from the movie, but it loses so much goodwill when you have to do it 25 times before you figure out the trick. And by the way, the trick is to wait to do the famous pen takedown until he takes out his knife, because then he drops it. You're welcome. Now, brawling is 50% of the game, but what else is going on here? Well, when you're not beating people up, the other main activity is shooting. You probably shoot more people in one level of this game than Bourne shoots across all 3 movies, but hey, that's video games for you. Similar to the hand-to-hand combat, the shooting has some serious flaws and some major wins. Guns have a decent amount of punch to them. Rumble feedback is pronounced. Your weapons frequently stagger enemies before landing a kill shot, which I'm always a fan of as it mixes up the interplay between you and the enemies and generally just adds variety to the encounters. Enemies also take every chance they get to fall off a ledge, fall into water, or get punched into an object in the environment. The AI puts up a good fight too. I found that they use cover well, and they made me work for kills instead of standing out in the open or leaving cover for no reason, and it makes for some fun battles. They weren't always perfect, but some part of me kept getting annoyed that they weren't presenting themselves as easy targets, which made me think maybe other games have dumber enemies and I'm just used to that. You can also shoot cover to chip away at it and cause enemies to seek new cover. I thought that was a good balance between indestructible cover and totally permeable cover, and the visuals of surfaces deteriorating as they take hits can be impressive. Aiming in the Bourne Conspiracy is weird. The left shoulder button holsters or draws your weapon, but once your weapon is drawn, it's automatic aim down sights until you holster it again. Now, this doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world, but the camera zooms in farther than I'd like and narrows your look angle by a lot, so moving around the environment with your gun drawn is altogether clunky and awkward. It's hard to imagine why they committed to this construct, but what you'll find is once an area is cleared of enemies, you'll holster your gun before proceeding to the next area. As mentioned earlier, you can use the adrenaline you store up for gun takedowns as well. And there's an interesting twist. You have to nail a bit of a QuickTime event for the execution to work. I'll touch on this more later, but I thought the progression of this mechanic across the 3 spy games was noteworthy, because Bourne prompts you for the execution and then makes you nail a QuickTime event, or Bourne will miss the shot. Rather than prompting the player, Bond will allow you to enter a slow-mo focus state at will, and then require the player to pull the trigger on each target to bag the kills. Finally, Splinter Cell uses a mark and execute system where as long as you have a line of sight to each target, Sam will take out every one of them after the player hits one measly button. So each one demands less and less of the player to pull off. Bourne relies more on QuickTime events throughout its runtime than I think most gamers would prefer, especially now that many regard QuickTime events as a punchline and a product of their time. And some of them are utterly preposterous, like moving the shelves in front of the windows and later on dodging sniper fire. And they also use a QuickTime event for taking out guards with a rifle instead of letting me do it, but I found some of them compelling for the simple reason that QuickTime events allow for player participation in situations where they might relinquish control altogether in other titles. As another example, fistfights in Bourne will occasionally be interrupted by an enemy trying to land a takedown on on you, or someone trying to tag team you from the sidelines. Players will be presented with a quick button prompt to counter the attack, and if they get it wrong, they get punished. A game like Arkham puts you in this situation constantly, but the counter input is always the same button, so the reflex test becomes one-dimensional. When this game does it, the button required changes each time, so there's an extra dimension of reflex and response required, and it adds just a bit of tension and satisfaction when you nail it. The same is true of the shooting takedowns. Sure, Bourne is a master assassin, but shooting people should still require a certain level of skill from the player, just like it requires skill from the character. I'm undecided if I think button prompts were the most elegant way to handle the shooting side, but I like where High Noon Studios' heads are and it's at least more engaging than its competitors here in the video. The Bourne Conspiracy doesn't exactly present itself as a stealth game, but knowing the franchise, you might expect to do some sneaking and not just some fighting. The stealth mechanics basically do not exist. Enemies will detect and shoot at you instantly if you look at them wrong or give them any reason to notice you. Levels are not really designed to be navigated through undetected. Most of them will force you into shootouts even if you would rather avoid them. But there was one level where I tried to sneak through a museum and holy smokes, it actually worked. I was so surprised, and within a couple of minutes, all hell breaks loose and it's back to full tilt combat again. I think the spy fantasy might have been served well with some more cerebral sneaking sections, especially with levels that were geared a bit more towards that, but that obviously wasn't on High Noon's agenda. While the back of the box boasts shooting, hand-to-hand combat, and driving sequences, there's only one driving mission in the Bourne Conspiracy. Although it is a riot. You and Marie hop in the Mini Cooper for a chase through the streets of Paris, just like in the movie. You'll dodge obstacles, fling yourself around corners, use adrenaline to dodge cars in slow-mo, escape down narrow alleyways, and crash through storefronts. The Mini is zippy with forgiving handling, and Paris is well designed for vehicular mayhem. The whole thing is just great, dumb fun, and you'll feel like a champ if you hit a good flow, nailing turns, avoiding collisions, hitting the slow-mo, and outpacing the police. I was bummed it was the only one of its kind, but at least it's awesome. Then there's Detective Vision. Sorry, Survivor Vision. Sorry, Eagle Vision. Whatever it's called here. Even Bourne can't avoid the pitfalls of 2008 game design. Or even today's game design, really. One of the strongest parts Bourne has going for it is its overall presentation. I was impressed from the get-go by its graphics and visual design. It looks better than I expected it to, and while some of the environments are more inviting than others, the good ones look good. At its best, the game nails the gritty, chilly look of the film series perfectly, which reinforces the tone of the story. Levels, especially outdoor ones, have this slightly oppressive, slightly hostile look to them, while still appearing bleakly pretty. Some standouts include the opening city streets, Lithuania after exiting the library, and the rooftop infiltration near the end. The snow-covered streets outside the embassy in Paris are reconstructed well from the film. Though the camera sometimes zooms too far in, there are moments where Bourne takes cover and the camera zooms up right on the action in a way that really sucks you in. You feel the intensity, and it creates some cool moments. There's also a healthy dose of camera shake, depth of field, and other lens effects to add flair to the visuals. The game isn't afraid to use fog or blur the background to add haze either. I think they're reflexing a little bit of creativity and aiming for vibes instead of reaching for 100% visual fidelity. But it's unclear how much of that, if any, was driven by technical limitations. The audio design is also pretty top-notch. Combat sounds great. Fistfights are nice and crunchy. Guns sound good, and enemies make some crazy sounds as they take damage. If you listen close, you might even hear some gurgling on their own blood. When gunfights are in full tilt, it will sound like the world is getting blown apart around you. It's great fun. The game features some original music that is okay, but I gotta say, getting to employ the John Powell score from the films in certain moments is totally unfair. His music steals the show. If you want to make players feel like they're in the movie, it doesn't get better than this. One drawback to the presentation is a number of weirdly edited moments. Sometimes a QuickTime event, a cutscene, or a fight will just end with really abrupt cuts. These range from minor to relatively major. In film, jarring editing is usually in place to cut around low budgets or bad performers, say in fistfights. But neither explanation makes sense for why a video game's cinematics would be edited so abruptly. When you put it all together, what you get is a mix of good and bad. I want to play a couple of sequences from my playthrough to show you what I'm talking about. Shooting through this airport and into the tram is cool. Lots of NPCs cowering, hiding, running away, reacting, which I thought was a really cool touch. They feel alive, like you're really in an airport in a shootout and they really want to escape. But there's also some weird stuff. Plenty of games use goofy route blocking obstacles to put you on the right path. The ones in Bourne can be downright comical. And did you know Jason's face heals like Wolverine when he recovers health? You'll see me looking around the airport for where to go next, and a fight doesn't trigger until I find my way just around the bar into just the right spot for the enemies to decide I'm worth shooting again. There's a cool shootout before hopping on the tram with debris and cover deteriorating. Chasing goons through the subway tunnel while trains go barreling by is choice. The rooftop infiltration is good. The environment was pretty, and it turned into an absolutely amazing shootout inside the multi-story lobby thing. I don't know what to call it, but that was one of the highlights of the game for me. It's another example of the devs embellishing on an already cool scene from the movie to turn it into a more traditional video game moment, and it pays out like a slot machine. The destruction is awesome, and the enemies just kept pouring in. Satisfying kills and decent gunplay, and it spills out onto the streets where it remains mostly cool with nice locales and destruction. Taking the game holistically, I also think it's interesting as an adaptation of the Bourne series, especially because the stated goal is become Bourne. That's why we're all here, right? Some of the changes made in the translation go against the essence of the Bourne series, but some of them are pretty smart. For instance, if you watch this scene from the movie, you might think it would be a little slim for an interactive section of a video game, but sneaking around the farm and taking out the professor is cool. They rendered the environment well and creatively stretched the encounter out into a video game level instead of a cutscene. While the gunfights get pretty wild sometimes, overall I view them as detached from the essence of what makes Bourne Bourne. In the movies, he's usually outsmarting guys and doesn't fight or shoot dozens and dozens of goons. In the game, Bourne plays more like a walking tank than a clever operator, but also, it's an action game. It kinda comes with the territory, although the story goes that this is actually why Matt Damon backed out of the project. Overall, I liked the game but didn't love it. It's uneven. The graphics and audio design might be the best part. The gunfights are nuts, but does Bourne usually get into nutty gunfights? The scripted fight choreography is next level, but does Bourne normally stand around and box for 5 minutes in the movies? Does it make you feel like a secret agent? Does it make you feel like Bourne? It definitely has its moments, but there's another title in our list trying to capture the feel of a film franchise, and that game is 007 Bloodstone. Going into Bloodstone, I expected a serviceable, if uninspiring, third-person shooter which may or may not connect well with the Daniel Craig Bond films, and by extension, connect the player with the fantasy of being Bond. I'm thrilled to say I was dead wrong. This game slots between the second and third films in Craig's Bond run and features a story written by Bruce Fierstein, who wrote multiple other Bond movies and video games. As you will see throughout the video, I was routinely impressed by how much the game genuinely feels like a companion to the film series. Everything from the story and characters and writing to the locales, enemies, and action set pieces. As far as first impressions go, despite coming out 2 years after the Bourne Conspiracy, I was surprised at how rough the graphics looked in the intro cutscene. Oh boy, I thought, is this going to have aged worse than Bourne? But hang on, does it matter? It's Judi freaking Dench! Bond himself looks considerably better than M, and the actual gameplay looks even better. Honestly, the environment looks pretty dang great. Water, moody lighting, jet skis and boats, lavish yacht, explosive opening. It feels like Bond immediately. The music and voice acting are there.
And what can I provide for the gentleman?
You have a vodka martini.
The gameplay feels fluid, much more so than Bourne. Controls are tight, aiming follows the left trigger aim down sights convention, and the look sensitivity feels less weighty. I like the ability to switch cover points across doorways or around corners, but the on-screen button prompts are a little intrusive. And while this game gets part of the way there, I found myself wishing for the Splinter Cell system of dashing from cover to cover as you advance through an area. Detaching from cover, standing up straight, and sprinting to the next spot while you struggle with Bond's orientation and the camera angle can be a hassle when people are shooting at you. The production values are really good. The surround sound is incredible, like during the boat chase. Did I mention there's a boat chase? Speaking of which, the game wastes no time getting you into the thick of things. Classic Bond-Bourne dichotomy. Bond opens with a shootout, a boat chase, a massive explosion, another shootout, and a car chase with massive explosions. Then you wake up in bed next to a hottie. Bourne starts with moody ambient stuff and a cerebral story, or the action game adaptation of one. But the vibes are still there, mostly. Bond is just like spectacle, explosions, amazing title song and sequence. It fits right in with the movies, especially the Craig entries. It's honestly the highest compliment I could pay it. I thought the music in Bond was fantastic. Composer Richard Jacques put together nearly 3 hours of original music, which feels so much like David Arnold's work on Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace that I looked up the composer, expecting it to be Arnold himself. You'll hear a lot of it as you play, and it's top tier. Eventually, you'll meet the Bond girl. She's great. Their conversation and the cinematography is great at evoking the movies. I felt the same about the briefing screens, too. This all feels very at home in the Craig canon. It's also so funny to me that you have almost the same hand-to-hand takedown leading to firearm takedown system in all 3 games. There are differences with each, but I'm kind of floored at how they were all on a similar page, especially because Bond and Splinter Cell were released months apart from each other, far too close to be copying homework. Bloodstone gives players the ability to go into a slow-mo focus mode for up to 3 consecutive gun kills. Each foe you take down with a melee attack grants you 1 focus kill, and the takedowns are pretty righteous. Compare this to Splinter Cell, where you only have to melee kill 1 enemy to unlock the execute option, and once you have it, you can execute as many enemies as your gun allows. Bloodstone makes you work a little harder for it, and once you trigger focus mode with the left bumper, you can still aim between foes, and you still have to pull the trigger for each shot. It's minor, but I did appreciate the added interaction. It's also interesting because Splinter Cell is easily the most focused on stealth out of the 3 titles, and as a result, you do a lot more planning and preparing for encounters. In Splinter Cell, you can only execute someone if you previously marked them, but Bond's system allows you to slow down time at any moment and pull off a quick kill on someone who might otherwise get the best of you. For me, it resulted in a couple of super close calls. Like Splinter Cell, there's not much to do for hand-to-hand combat other than approach enemies and hit B, but I found Bond's melee animations to be gratifying and sufficiently brutal. Just like how Bourne's choreography evokes the movies perfectly, I thought Bloodstone did the same for Craig's scrappy, violent combatives. Overall, I was pleased with the gunplay, and the more I played, the better I came to like it. The guns feel kind of weak in the virtual hand, lacking a certain punch, but enemies have good reactions to gunshots with decent death animations and good staggers. Guns are incredibly accurate, which feels great as a player, and the shootouts will put your skills to the test. I ended up playing on the hard difficulty, which created a good level of challenge where I couldn't sail through encounters carelessly. Sloppy shooting or maneuvering got me killed many times. This Coliseum fight ate me for breakfast, but at least the gunplay is good. When you get pinned, you get some Ghost Recon Future Soldier action going on with camera shake and punchy bullet impact sounds. By the way, Bourne, this is how you give players control over a sniper rifle. Bloodstone does a terrific job of translating the look and feel of the Bond films to a video game. Compared to the Bourne Conspiracy, I think the environments in this are more fun. More exotic, prettier, more vivid. Bourne, again, true to form for the franchise, is grittier, grungier, more muted. Even the costumes. Are they technically costumes? In Bloodstone scream Craig 007 movie to me. Look at the NPCs. These look like they came straight out of a Bond film. James obviously looks great, like himself. I actually wondered if he did the mocap for this game because they do a good job of emulating him. Turns out they used his stunt double. So I chalk a lot of this up to the level design, meaning the environments themselves and also the scripting of events and encounters. In other words, they come up with excellent set pieces and they put them in locales that all feel very Bondy. Take this great shootout in the catacombs and the train tunnels. Great Bond moments. They're turning the tables on you after a sneaky infiltration, you're sprinting from cover to cover and shooting those guys coming down the elevator. Peak Bond stuff. Getting chased by a tunnel boring machine is also peak Bond. Afterward, I got into this shootout with bullets whizzing past me and hitting the walls behind me. The surround sound in this game is so good. Chasing this guy through Istanbul after the car chase through these ruins. Great shootouts, tons of target switching and staggering enemies. I feel like John Wick. Sneaking around and infiltrating this casino at night. The tux, the stony architecture, the fireworks, the vistas, the vibes are impeccable. Some stealth takedowns, some focus shots. I feel like Bond. Why do the sneaking and stealth systems feel better in this game than half of today's AAA fare with optional stealth? Like Bourne, the back of the Bloodstone box boasts of high-speed, aggressive driving missions. Bloodstone delivers on that in spades. There are multiple driving sequences, and each one could have been in a Bond film. You'll wreak havoc, cause ludicrous amounts of damage, and see a whole lot of explosions. In one instance, you chase a giant construction truck through a construction site and city streets. It's the most Bond thing ever. Completely outrageous. I loved it. Some of the driving missions do get kind of frustrating with some insta-kill traps and some trial and error, but it's my fault for not driving well. All things considered, the driving sections are well put together with cars that handle decently well. It ain't Forza or Gran Turismo, but it works. So, we covered shooting, melee, and driving. There's one other main aspect of this game I haven't really touched on yet. You have a smartphone for scanning the environment. Literally no one could get away without putting a vision mode in their game. No one! The smartphone highlights enemies in the world, but it also lets you scan things for information. This is a welcome, if slightly weird inclusion. Feels more like Metroid Prime than a spy game. Scanning and gathering intelligence should fit right at home with a spy or secret agent simulator, and yet Bond is so loud and ostentatious it doesn't completely gel with the gameplay, and the menus make it a little clunky to get in and out of the intel readings. Plus, the game mostly prompts you when you're nearby a scannable object, which is a bit in tension with the idea of exploration or discovery. Then again, this game excels as a shooter and action game, so is exploration or discovery the point? Another bone to pick, the smartphone prompt also comes up if the game thinks you're taking too long to traverse the area. It's really obnoxious. If you're going to encourage me to poke my nose around a little bit, then let me do it. Judging Bloodstone on delivering the perfect spy fantasy, it does so much right, even more than I expected it would. The game feels good to play and is smartly designed to evoke the Bond films with great level design, compelling combat, terrific production values, and a cast and story worthy of the Bond name. It's a shame Bloodstone is confined to the 360 and PS3 hardware with no easy way to buy it or play it on modern consoles. And it's a crying shame that Bloodstone became Bizarre Creations' last game. When you look up their pedigree, you appreciate why this game works so well. They made Blur, Project Gotham Racing, and various third-person shooters. The ingredients were all there. We turn now to the game I expected to emerge as champion. But will Splinter Cell Conviction defend its crown? This was the one of the three I was most excited to play, and I have such fond memories of it. And I thought it would be a good contrast to the other two because they all exist in this world where they influence and are influenced by each other and the same properties. Sam smashing a guy into a bathroom sink is very Casino Royale coded, for example. And I expected this one would stand as the best video game, because it's not a licensed game, right? But maybe not. Licensed games have come a long way since the dice rolls of the old days where you might get a dud or a gem. The past couple console generations have seen their fair share of great or even exceptional licensed games, and Bourne and Bond ended up both being pretty good. The setup here is Sam has gotten out of the game, but players from his past are conspiring to bring him back in, tantalizing him with news that his daughter's death was faked. Sam reluctantly returns to the fold, and he's getting revenge on all the people who lied to him, stole his happiness from him, and are now conspiring to stop him. Despite coming out 4 years before John Wick, Conviction often gets labeled as a John Wick simulator, and whether that is a good or a bad thing is up for debate. The retired guy being dragged back into the world he left for revenge plot certainly lines up with John Wick. It shares other similarities, what with the lightning-fast executions and the now trendy center-axis relock shooting stance, and as far as the nuts and bolts gameplay, there's some similarities as well. Conviction served as a departure from the methodical stealth gameplay the series had been known for up to that point. It certainly leans more into combat and less into stealth than any entry before it, but after replaying it for this video, I am reminded that a run-and-gun shooter this is not. Yes, there are moments where you either can or must engage in loud-pitched gun battles with enemies, but throughout the missions you must still use stealth to your advantage. When I tried to blast my way through, I usually ended up dead, over and over and over. I would say at least 50% of the game either encourages or requires stealthy approaches. You get the usual tools at your disposal to scout the terrain and plan your advance through levels, sometimes without firing a shot or engaging an enemy. Oftentimes you use surprise to get the drop on overwhelming enemies to even the odds. I forgot how athletic Sam is in this game. Environments are filled with ledges to shimmy along, pipes to climb, and you can drop down on or shoot enemies from basically anything. You spider monkey your way around environments and let people chase your last known position while you flank or ambush them from a new position. Sam also has the ability to dart from cover to cover, a feature whose absence was totally felt in the other two titles. Whereas most Splinter Cell games will fail you if you trigger some amount of alarms, Conviction uses a more dynamic system, where enemies in a local area will be alerted to your presence and change their tactics, but once you proceed to the next area, you get a blank slate to achieve stealth once again. This is obviously more forgiving and casual than the older games, but it serves the overall package, which is attempting to make Sam more agile and more of a predator than a silent observer. Stealth isn't the end-all be-all, it's just a means to an end. Sam's always been able to grab and interrogate enemies, but now he takes human shields. And while this creates a more approachable game, I had a lot of issues with the shooting. And if you're going to make a game revolve much more heavily around the shooting, that's a bad combination. See, for starters, the accuracy of the guns in this game is extremely questionable. One of my biggest complaints from the first Splinter Cell game when I replayed it a couple years ago was how inaccurate the guns were. borderline worthless. A gun in a stealth game can become a crutch if it's too useful, but if it's too handicapped, it becomes a liability. How many of us have botched a stealthy approach when we finally take the shot we've been lining up and miss?
Oh, God damn it!
And don't get me started on how the cursor doesn't always stay on target like in this situation. Why are you like this? Or sometimes you have a clear sight line to an enemy, but to shoot him, Sam exposes himself anyway. That's bad enough, but then you get into these mad gunfights with deadly enemies who always outnumber you, so if you can't put rounds on target, you're going to be killed. So it was frustrating how many times I pulled the trigger in Conviction and missed the first 1 or 2 shots, or more, because the spread was too sloppy. It's a shame too, because the guns in Conviction sound and feel good to use. Mag dumping a P226 into a bad guy is a special kind of satisfaction.
Like a pussy.
But I would also like to be able to reach out and touch someone. I also have to mention the controls. They kept messing me up, and each of these games had control quirks that tripped me up, which isn't their fault necessarily, but have you ever played a game whose reload button was clicking the left thumbstick? Yeah, me neither. If you play anything long enough to get into the groove, you'll be fine, but I flubbed my fair share of encounters because of control inputs. Simultaneously, I'm sympathetic to Yahtzee's critiques from his review where he says, you're not controlling Sam, you're controlling a monkey sitting on Sam's back. Press a button and run over there. Press a button and take this guy down. Press a button and execute these guys. He's not totally wrong. Even the focus shots in Bond require you to hold the button and pull the triggers, which is at least 2 inputs. That said, if Conviction takes some steps back from its physical demands on the player, it takes some steps forward in some of the mental demands. Evaluating each situation and planning your attack obviously requires more thought than just shooting your way through. There is some 3-dimensionality to the levels that allows for additional flexibility and creativity, and you can mark and execute objects in the environment for chain kills along with people. I definitely realized while reviewing footage for this video that I overlooked some environmental aids in certain shootouts that would have saved my bacon, but you have to have the presence of mind to see them or use them. You eventually get a new vision mode the Splinter Cell series has never had before. It's an echolocation sonar type mode, although all this really means in practice is you get 1 mode instead of 2 or 3, and you can use it to see enemies through walls. When it comes to scouting the area and ambushing enemies, it doesn't get more useful than this, but the game is also smart to limit its utility to pulses that aren't real-time updates, and the clarity of the picture diminishes as you move, so it encourages you to tap into it, see the whereabouts of the enemies, and flip it off again before going to work. For steering players away from leaving the handy vision mode enabled by default, this is a good system. Aside from the gameplay, Conviction has such a sense of style and presentation. Check out those main menus. This is really well done. The cutscenes are good, featuring some creative transitions and camera moves. I love this one that zooms through the White House to you. The writing is okay, some of the barks aren't great. The story is good, if a bit cliche, but it's told well and convincingly by the talented voice cast. Of course, the third echelon dudes now have red goggles because they're the bad guys. Now, I've always loved this flashback. It teaches you about hiding in the shadows and doing mark and execute, and the backdrop is Sam stopping a home invasion with extreme prejudice. It rules so hard. I seriously wonder if this intro could even get made today. One thing that always drives me nuts about Conviction is anytime you want to execute someone, if you want to know if you'll be able to see it or not, flip a coin. Half the time, the camera either pivots, placing the target out of view, or the target winds up out of frame somehow. For a game that's going for style and wow factor, this always played like stepping on a rake. It slows down and makes a big deal about the execution, and then fumbles it. There are some moments in the story that actually surprised me, so they were effective twists. And I've played this story multiple times. The reveal where the flashback is actually Vic and not Sam is great. I forgot, and Vic's narration in the following cutscene is great too.
It made life tricky for the spotters. I could dodge him. Sam, he could find them. And he did.
But then, all you do is follow guys who clearly don't belong at the fair into the shadows and beat them up. Anyway, cool use of flash forwards in this story too.
Just do what you have to do.
I always do, Sam. I always do.
One of Conviction's calling cards is these projected images and words on the walls and buildings. They show you some of Sam's memories or what he's thinking and remind you of your objectives. Another cool innovation was this game shifting to grayscale when you're concealed. Instead of putting a light meter on the HUD signaling how exposed you are, it's just visible or hidden, color or grayscale. One of the other selling points for this game was supposed to be these interrogation sequences with contextual beatdowns using the environment. Man, it's getting hard to keep all these games straight. But as I alluded to earlier, these don't totally work. The beatdowns are savage enough, but you don't have many opportunities to use them, and the game is so stilted whenever you trigger either the scripted ones or even the regular melee kills in-game. Of the 3 games, the melee animations in Conviction are the least fleshed out and often just seem awkward. The game looks really good and plays really well and loads super fast. The game crashed 3 times and sent me to the main menu. I'm not sure why. But the enhanced version plays at 9 times higher resolution than the original game, a steady frame rate, enhanced performance, and in HDR if you have a Series X console. Some of the environments are kind of drab, but there are some good ones too. The Washington Monument is nifty, but the setting isn't exactly front and center. It's a little hard to feature a giant obelisk when you're right next to it. Lincoln is genuinely cool though. Nice vibe, very moody fall atmosphere. Infiltrating the Black Arrow Lab is also cool. I love walking up to the gate guard and blasting him in the face. One really cool cutscene in particular is the 3rd echelon elevator ride. And then some of the 3rd echelon environments are neat. The lobby is dope. The executive office is sweet. Overall, some cool stuff to look at in Conviction. This video isn't about multiplayer or other game modes, but I feel obligated to mention that Bourne is single player only, Bond had online competitive multiplayer, and Splinter Cell had a staggering amount of other content. There are numerous multiplayer modes, such as challenge modes, objective games, and a mode for eliminating enemies from campaign levels like Rainbow Six's Terrorist Hunt. There was also a totally distinct, fully fleshed out co-op campaign. Conviction is already a 6 to 8 hour campaign, and the co-op is about as long. There's a lot of content here to keep you busy, and at least while the servers were still alive, have some fun with some friends online. Even now, split screen and system link still work. All told, Conviction is still a strong game. I wish the guns were more dependable, and compared to the competition, I wish the melee kills were more interesting. But the gameplay is engaging and approachable, fast-paced, and intense. It looks great, especially on modern Xboxes, and it tells a fun story with excellent voice work. A number of its gameplay innovations advance the fantasy of being a spy, and its levels aid the player in realizing this vision with some iconic locations and plenty of opportunities to stalk, ambush, and evade enemies. At the end of my triple play, I found myself unsure which game came out on top, which one fulfilled its duty the best. Did the Bourne Conspiracy make me become Bourne? Did Bloodstone capture the essence of Daniel Craig's Bond films? Does Splinter Cell Conviction put the licensed games in their place? Bourne is not what I expected, but it takes bigger swings and is more interesting than I guessed. In some ways, it feels more like a third-person shooter than a proper Bourne simulator, but it's more than the sum of its parts. The music, visuals, fight choreography, and blend of gameplay styles elevates it to be something commendable. Bond is exactly what I expected, but a lot more fun and polished than I guessed, and its story, acting, and level design make it feel more like a Bond film than I hoped. And Conviction is a solid package. I'm surprised at how the gunplay and melee combat feel flawed, but all aspects of the game coalesce into a fun and violent outing as a predatory, jaded Sam Fisher. And thankfully, it's readily available on the Xbox storefront, where it plays and looks better than ever. If you have access to a 360 or PS3 in a used game store or eBay, Bourne and Bond are inexpensive and worth a couple of nights of your free time. Go forth and track them down. For anyone who made it this far, as always, I appreciate your time. If you want to watch another one of my videos, you might appreciate my very deep dive into Ghost Recon Future Soldier, which is one of my favorite third-person shooters, and it shares some DNA with Splinter Cell Conviction. Thank you again, and keep it clean.